I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved. These were the words of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar as he addressed a gathering in 1927. When we talk about feminist icons in India, we often tend to overlook Dr. Ambedkar. While Babasaheb's work is most often cited as an example while opposing and fighting the caste system and caste bias, we often fail to recognize the other aspects of his work. In this Feminist Archive video, we take a deep dive into Dr. Ambedkar's contribution to the feminist movement in India. Apart from the numerous speeches which highlight his basic belief in the equality of women, Ambedkar's theorization of the interlinked nature of caste and gender-based oppression in India was a pioneering feat. In his 1917 paper titled Castes in India, Dr. Ambedkar talks about how in the Indian context there are specific ways in which women and their sexuality are controlled. All hinge on the maintenance of the caste system. He outlines this by showing how strict control of women through sati, child marriage, and restrictions of widow remarriage were all devised to deal with the problematic idea of surplus women. Dr. Ambedkar takes up the foremost book of Hindu law, the Manusmriti, to illustrate the double marginalization that women have faced over centuries. In his book Riddles of Hinduism, Babasaheb details Manu's low opinion of women. As noted in the collection of essays against the madness of Manu, Babasaheb talks about how Manusmriti specifically highlighted that the inherent seductions by women of men is what leads to disloyalty and therefore necessitates control. Dr. Ambedkar also questioned the Hindu epics for the gender dynamics they pushed forth. He was specifically extremely critical of Ram's treatment of Sita in the Ramayana. Dr. Ambedkar wanted women to have greater participation in all walks of life, especially in the political arena. Therefore, as a legislator under the British regime, he was one of the first people to root for the rights of working women. He wrote extensively on women's oppression and founded newspapers like Mook Nayak and Bahishkrit Bharat with sections that exclusively covered women-centric issues. As British India's first Indian law minister, Dr. Ambedkar continuously pushed for family planning measures for women and ensured the enactment of universal adult franchise, legalizing voting rights for women and several other marginalized groups. Dr. Ambedkar was also the one to introduce the Hindu Code Bill to facilitate the legal recognition of women as equal citizens in the country. The bill granted women the rights to divorce and the right to inheritance and provided for legal recognition of intercaste marriages. What warrants to be noted and highlighted is that Dr. Ambedkar stood by his suggestions and beliefs in the face of opposition from conservative members of the parliament. In his resignation speech, Dr. Ambedkar said that while he was uncomfortable with the workings of the cabinet and the government for some time, he never resigned earlier because he wanted the Hindu Code Bill to become law. When the bill was delayed repeatedly and then finally dropped because of the lack of time for its discussion, Dr. Ambedkar handed in his resignation. Dr. Ambedkar's influence also led to the passage of various other pro-women acts like the Equal Remuneration Act of 1976 and the Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961, legally entitling women to equal wages and criminalizing dowry respectively. Dr. Ambedkar wanted to build a society based on liberty and equality for all. He recognized the equal status of women in society and worked towards securing it legally during a period when no one else was even talking about it. His contribution to the feminist movement in India thus cannot be sidelined or forgotten.